this bill that there won't be an interruption of service that could lead to an end of this app. I don't think we fully appreciate the impact this is going to have, and for that, I'm a strong no. Thank you, and I yield back.
Gentleman from Kentucky reserves. I recognize the gentlewoman from Washington.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 30 seconds to the gentleman from Indiana, Dr. Bouchon.
The gentleman is recognized for 30 seconds.
Mr. Speaker, one of the most important duties of the Constitution assigned to Congress is to protect the American people and to safeguard our national security. After hearing from national security experts last week, it is clear the prolific use of media platforms controlled by the Chinese Communist Party and other foreign adversaries poses a danger to our country. I am grateful to my bipartisan colleagues for moving this legislation, showing we will take action to protect the American people, their personal data, and security from foreign interference and manipulation. We took an oath to do so. Thank you, and I yield back.
The gentlelady reserves. I now recognize the gentleman from Kentucky.
I now yield 1 minute to my friend on the other side of the aisle from California, Ms. Kamlager Dove.
The gentlelady is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to oppose H.R. 7521. Banning TikTok is an insufficient Band-Aid solution to the genuine national security concerns the app raises and exposes. The bill seriously undermines civil liberties by essentially banning a platform that 150 million Americans use to engage in free speech and expression. A statewide TikTok ban has already been paused by a federal judge on First Amendment grounds. Even without TikTok, the PRC could still be able to conduct influence operations on other social media platforms and obtain sensitive U.S. user data through hacking or data brokers. Finally, this bill would greatly expand the executive's authority to ban tech companies with zero congressional oversight. I cannot sign a blank check to some future president who would easily and dangerously weaponize this legislation to profit and silence. Creatives, artists, content creators, and businesses in my district will get caught in the crossfire of this bill and deserve better than federal overreach as a substitute for a thoughtful and incisive solution to this complicated national security challenge. Thank you. I yield back.
Reserve.
Gentleman from Kentucky reserves. I recognize the gentlewoman from Washington.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 40 seconds to the gentlewoman from Iowa, Ms. Henson.
The lady's recognized for 40 seconds.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today in support of this simple bill. It forces TikTok to cut ties with the CCP or lose American users. The day after we introduced our bill, TikTok went into panic mode. They lied to their users, saying Congress was going to ban TikTok, using young kids as political pawns. TikTok's growth stunt proved our point. What if on Election Day, TikTok sent out an alert saying our elections were canceled? We must act now. Today, we're sending a message to the CCP that we are going to deflate the 140 million spy balloons that they have installed on American phones. We must act and pass this bill today. Thank you. I yield back.
The gentlelady reserves. I now recognize the gentleman from Kentucky.
Reserve.
Gentleman from Kentucky reserves. I now recognize the gentlelady from Washington.
Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to yield 1 minute to the gentlewoman from Florida, Ms. Kamick.
The gentlelady from Florida is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today we take a stand against the Chinese Communist Party and their efforts to turn content creators in America into foot soldiers for the CCP. You know, we aren't banning a company as the high-paid lobbyist for ByteDance, which is owned by China, would lead you to believe. We aren't infringing on constitutionally protected speech or growing the size of government. All we're saying is break up with the Chinese Communist Party. As a constitutional conservative, I don't want my government or big tech to have unfettered access to my private data. So why in the hell would we want and allow the Chinese Communist Party to have access to our private data? The CCP is an adversary of the United States, and this legislation narrowly, thoughtfully, and directly addresses the national security threat and protecting Americans' data and, by extension, their First Amendment rights. Because let us not pretend for 1 second that TikTok is not infringing on our amendment, our First Amendment rights. I would say that this bill, as Representative Roy from Texas said, this bill is about conduct, not content.
Gentlelady's time has expired.
Conduct, not content. And there is no restriction mentioned on content in this
gentlelady's
bill.
time has
but
expired.
I will mention,
Does the
Mr. Speaker, I
gentlelady
will
from Washington
mention
reserve?
that the espionage is not covered or protected as one of the 5 tenets of
gentlelady
the
is no
First
longer
Amendment.
recognized. The gentlewoman from Washington, you have 1 minute and 3/4 time left, and I now recognize the gentleman from Kentucky.
Right there. I'd like to now yield 1 minute to my good friend from Arizona, Mr. Schweikert.
The gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
And thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem, and to my friends. I actually am about to try to make everyone mad. Yay! I actually believe data is a private property right. It belongs to you as an American citizen. The problem with our design here, it's really well-meaning, but it doesn't get at the structural problem. So you have an entity over here, they divest. What makes them not then take the data, sell it to a data broker, and it gets washed and ends up still in the bad actor's hands? You got to understand, there's even articles out this week of even our own 3-letter agencies buying their data now from data brokers instead of doing the tracking. We need to think dramatically more globally. Your data is a private property right. That will be the only way we end up protecting ourselves from bad actors and sometimes even our own
time has
selves.
expired.
And with that, I yield back.
The gentleman from Kentucky reserves, I believe he has 3 minutes, 3.5 minutes available. And I'll recognize the gentlewoman from Washington.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 30 seconds to the gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Wahlberg.
Gentleman is recognized for 30 seconds.
Mr. Speaker, last March, when I asked about America's data being stored on and accessed by China, TikTok CEO stated under oath that it was not accessible by the CCP. However, this statement was a lie. As their own internal recording said, everything is seen in China. H.R. 7521 gives TikTok and similar apps 6 months to divest from their parent company, ByteDance. It's their choice. TikTok needs to decide whether they value their users or their ties to the Chinese Communist Party more. Simple as that. Vote for this bill. I yield back.
The gentleman yields, and the gentle lady from Washington yields, reserves. Gentleman from Kentucky will be recognized.
I reserve.
The gentleman from Kentucky reserves, and I'll recognize the gentle lady from Washington.
I reserve.
Gentle lady from Washington reserves.
Is the gentlelady prepared to close?
Prepared to close.
You have no other speakers?
I have one more speaker, and we'd like to close. So I'm going to wait. I'm going to reserve until you are ready to, until your time has expired. Are you prepared to close?
I'm prepared to close.
Okay.
The gentlelady has no further speakers.
The gentle lady from Washington has the right to close.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
I'd
I
like to
will
close.
The gentleman from Kentucky is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I know the other side is sincere, and we've not questioned that here today, and I won't question their sincerity. In fact, I think they've identified at least 3 problems that we have in America: moral decay of our society, invasion of Americans' privacy, and our competitiveness with China. But in this case, their cure is worse than the diseases. You know, there are ways to get at these root problems. We just haven't taken it upon ourselves to address those root problems with actual legislative solutions that have been put forth here in Congress. For instance, Mr. Warren Davidson's The Fourth Amendment is Not for Sale Act would put a strong stake in the ground to protect Americans' privacy, whether it's from our own government or some foreign governments. That is the kind of thing we need. We need warrants in the FISA program. Our government shouldn't be able to spy on Americans without a warrant, yet they are. Let's bring that to the floor and vote on it. These are the kind of cures we need, not the bill that's offered here today. The bill that's offered here today, even though I know it's offered genuinely, it could also be named the Facebook Protection and Enhancement Act, because it's not the American people who are going to benefit most from this. It will be Facebook. Their stock is going to go up if this bill should pass the Senate. Now, what are some ways that we could improve this bill? Well, it should at least have a sunset. I mean, that's the only reason we're able to debate whether FISA should have warrants in it, because it sunsets. And what have we observed? FISA's been abused. That's my concern with this TikTok ban. It will be abused. If it's just banning TikTok and ByteDance and copies of that, why does it need to be 13 pages long? And I know they say it doesn't ban it, it forces divestiture of the company. This sounds like when American companies try to do business in third world countries and a dictator says, well, you can do business here, you just got to give me your company, and now you can continue to do business. We wouldn't let another country take over Ford Motor Company for selling Ford cars in their country. Yet that's what we're wanting to do here. And again, you know, this is a cure that is worse than the disease. Who's going to be prosecuted by this bill? Is it ByteDance or TikTok? Will they be taken to court? No. I mean, they're the target of this, but how do you elicit or effect a ban on them? By prosecuting Americans. The only way you can ban TikTok and the other companies from being here is to say what this bill says, which is we will bring civil action, the government will bring a civil action suit against you if you so much as host them here. If you have an app store that allows them to be here, you're an American or an American company and you will be the target of this bill. Those are the only people who can be pursued under this bill. And I know it's in order to go after TikTok, or so they say. Well, I would just close by saying that, you know, we're sitting here with phones made in China. We're wearing suits made in China. We drove cars here with chips that are made in China. And they're our foreign adversary. And by golly, we're going to do something about it. What are we going to do? We're going to tell Americans they can't put a piece of software on their computer. They can't go to certain websites that the president designates. So I urge my colleagues to oppose this well-intentioned bill because it will have bad consequences, and I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back the balance of his time, and I'll recognize the gentlelady from Washington.
Mr. Speaker, I yield as such time as remains to the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Crenshaw.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman has 1 minute and 15 seconds.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to address all of my colleagues who I think are confused about the First Amendment, confused about the nature of TikTok, and confused about the intentions of the Chinese Communist Party. Let me explain this really simple. TikTok is owned by ByteDance. ByteDance is in China, and when you're in China, you have to do whatever the Chinese Communist Party says you have to do. That's according to the National Intelligence Law passed in 2017. If they want you to spy for them, you will spy for them. That's how that works. They have a board member from the Chinese Communist Party on ByteDance. You wouldn't allow a radio tower owned by the Chinese to be put up right in the middle of Washington, D.C., and then allow it to just put out Chinese propaganda. You'd probably complain about that. That's exactly what TikTok can be used for, because millions of Americans are addicted to it. They see it, and the Chinese can absolutely manipulate those algorithms. The First Amendment does not give the Chinese Communist Party the right to American data or the right to manipulate the minds of Americans. That would be a really weird interpretation of the First Amendment. The primary counterarguments to this bill seem to be as shallow as, well, it doesn't do everything I want, and Facebook's really mean, and I don't want them to make money. So what, then that means you owe Chinese access to all of our data and access to manipulate the minds of Americans? I don't think so. This is a very specific bill, very specifically tailored. It does not harm American companies or American individuals. You know it. You got to read it. Pass this bill. And I yield back.
All time for debate is completed. The question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass the bill H.R. 7521 as amended? Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, 2/3 being in the affirmative.
Mr. Speaker.
What purpose does the gentleman from Kentucky rise?
I request the yeas and nays.
The gentleman from Kentucky requests the yeas and nays. Those favoring a vote by the yeas and nays will rise. A sufficient number having risen, the yeas and nays are ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This is a 15-minute vote.
Second.
On this vote, the yeas are 352, the nays are 65. One present, 2/3 being in the affirmative. The rules are suspended, the bill is passed, and without the objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, the unfinished business is the question on suspending the rules and pass Senate 1278, which the clerk will report by title.
Senate 1278, an act to designate the federal building located at 985 Michigan Avenue in Detroit, Michigan as the Rosa Parks Federal Building and for other purposes.
The question is, will the bill suspend the rules and pass the bill? So many as are in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, 2/3 being in the affirmative, the rules are suspended, the bill is passed, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. Correct? For what purpose does the gentleman from New York seek recognition?
Madam Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that when the House adjourns today, it adjourn to meet at 11 a.m. on Friday, March 15, 2024, and further, when the House adjourns on that date, it adjourned to meet at noon on Tuesday, March 19, 2024 for morning hour debate and 2 p.m. for legislative business.
Without objection.
Is the microphone on that? The House will be in order. Members, please take your conversations to the rear or the side gallery. The chair will now entertain requests for 1-minute speeches. For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Arizona seek recognition?
I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to recognize someone whose service will be felt by future generations of Arizonans. Arizona Senate President Warren Peterson. Senator Peterson's service to the people of Arizona began in 2012 when he was elected to the Arizona House of Representatives. Throughout his time in the House, he served as chairman of the Judiciary Committee and Majority Leader. Once his time in the House came to an end, Senator Peterson was elected to the Arizona Senate, where he became president in 2023. Under his leadership, Arizona has accomplished school choice, passed tax cuts for families across the state, and worked hard to enforce border security in the face of opposition from the left. During my own time in the Arizona House of Representatives, I was lucky enough to serve alongside President Peterson, where he was a respected colleague and a friend. Peterson's service to Arizona cannot be overstated, and his leadership is appreciated by all Arizonans. Thank you, and I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from New Jersey seek recognition?
Ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute, revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute. Gentlemen, suspend. The House will be in order. Please take your conversations to the rear or the side galleries. Gentlemen, proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to celebrate the Eagle Scout